Welcome to Refugee from Russia podcast. Did you guys know that if you lost your loved one, Red Cross can help you? Take World War II, for example. To say that it was hard to find someone in World War II would be honestly an understatement. Just picture this. If you live in LA, for instance, let's take LA. Every major street sign from Santa Monica to downtown, gone. Or half of your buildings that you know are turned into rubble. 1 in 6 person disappeared. You can find them because you have no phone, you have no internet, you have no GPS, you have no Wi-Fi, no way to connect. Also, your freeways, I think you have 405 to 101, ripped apart. Well, that's for you what Europe looked like after World War II. With no way to connect with people, millions are dead, millions are displaced, thousands, if not millions, are looking for their loved ones. And destruction was literally everywhere you looked. That destruction did not stop on specific country. It didn't spare anyone. It also reached a country that was a home for more than 186 million people, the country of USSR. And there was people that lived to see a day when they were reunited with their loved ones. Some of them, had to wait but until they finally reunited. But there were a lot of people that actually died without witnessing this, beautiful reunion with their loved ones. Donetsk City. Lermontov Street, please. You can hear nails hitting the keyboard as a woman in her early 30s is looking up Lermontov Street, Donetsk. Without raising her head, she squints her eyes and she says, "No results found." The man is clearly taken aback by that. No, it can't be. I know the street I'm looking for. Again, it's Lermontov Street, Donetsk City. Please try again. She started to look again for the same street. But again, no results. Seeing how this man got impacted by what she said in the first time around, she felt uneasy. She didn't really want to tell him again that, hey, there's no such street. "Sir," her voice changed this time. "I'm so sorry, but there's no such street. Maybe you're mistaken. Maybe there's another city. I don't know. I'm sorry." The voice started to shake, this man's voice. "You don't understand. You really need to help me. This is Lermontov Street, Donetsk City. Please find this person. I'm looking for someone special. You need to find her." A couple of days later, this woman was talking to her colleague at Red Cross, and she was recalling this incident that she had with a man a couple of days ago. And she thought, well, maybe she can help me. I don't know. Maybe we'll find this mysterious person. When she talked to her colleague, she said, "Can you look into this request? But do me a favor. Here's the zip code that he gave. Look into what borough does this zip code belong to in Donetsk City." And long and behold, this zip code brought them to the answer that they were looking for, to this Lermontov Street.
Wow.
But not in Donetsk City. This Lermontov Street was in Krakow City, Donetsk region. So today I want to tell you this incredible story about a Soviet woman and a Cuban man who fell in love, got married, had a beautiful baby boy, but their lives were senselessly ripped apart. And they only reunited 32 years later. Okay, guys, little disclaimer before we start. Today, I'm featuring a Soviet woman who's ethnically Ukrainian. And this might seem a bit different from my main focus on individuals from Russia. After all, this is a Sunday in Russia series. That said, the story began in USSR, when Russia and Ukraine were part of the same country. And many lives and experiences from that era are deeply connected. And this story is rooted in the shared Soviet past. So let's dive in. Do you guys know what happens to you and your body when you fall in love? So falling in love is literally like mixing a chemical cocktail. You have so many ingredients. You have dopamine that activates dopaminergic reward system. You have serotonin that creates serotonin shifts. One moment you're super happy, another moment maybe not so happy. Then also you have oxytocin, which creates bonding and drives bonding in our relationships. Then you have adrenaline. We also have norepinephrine. So these two hormones, they are responsible for racing heart, sweating. They also create intense emotions and experiences and make them memorable. They are enhancing your memory, by the way. It's crazy. I never thought about this. Falling in love makes your memory better.
Interesting.
Because, and maybe I'm just like, making this up right now, but because falling in love creates more memorable experiences, and these specific hormones like norepinephrine enhances your memory. So
Interesting.
it's good for your health to fall in love, basically, what I'm saying.
Okay.
But falling in love for a lot of people is not just a scientific phenomenon, right? Like, you can't say, you raise my oxytocin levels or you are my vasopressin. By the way, vasopressin is another hormone that is responsible, in a lot of cases, responsible in men for long-lasting relationships, for loyalty, and also for territorial behaviors. Regardless of which hormone impacts men or women, generally speaking, all of these ingredients create this magical cocktail. But for the characters of my story today, falling in love is nothing like a scientific phenomenon. They don't think about it that way. They think about this as a miracle. Picture this. It's USSR. And maybe don't picture it, because I don't know what you picture when you think about USSR. I don't want you to think anything bad, okay? Because a lot of times, especially if I'm speaking to English speakers, the USSR has a negative connotation. But I want you to think about regular people, okay? So let's do this again. Picture this. It's a university in USSR. You have a sophomore student, Alla, a beautiful, gorgeous lady who really captivates people's attention. Not just beautiful on the outside, but on the inside as well. Kind, gentle, funny, loving. And you have Haroldo, who is finishing his last year in the same college. There's so much, character and life and love about him. And the two, when they got together, they fell in love immediately. And everyone during their first couple of weeks together were really impressed by them, because look at them. They are mesmerizing. They are so lively. They are real. However, when they went outside, they were not allowed to walk around the city without permission.
Interesting.
Alla's sister, Lydia, this is what she says about this. She said, they weren't allowed to be in the city or move around the city on their own. They had to get a permission from the police. I accompanied them everywhere, and I had to take them to the bus stop, make sure they got on the bus, and from there, they managed on their own. End quote. I tried looking for any clue that can tell me why they had to get a permission from the police. Like, I don't know. Like, this is
I think
pretty.
I think it could be like governmental, because he was sent there just to be in school from another country, and then I think that I don't think he's gonna stay there. Or what do you think? He was staying there, or would he go back?
He had a duty to come back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just like all of the students, Cuban students, for instance, there was after the 90,
Like a foreign exchange.
like a foreign exchange student.
Right, but
Yeah,
with limitations, I guess. If you
Right,
need
right.
permits.
permit. Oh, that's what you mean. Okay, so, but then again, still, I'm thinking about this. If you have limitations, maybe on traveling outside of the, but then again, it
facility.
was the same country, USSR.
Right.
You didn't even have to have a visa to travel between different
Yes.
republics within USSR.
Yeah, but you're from USSR. Not
But
a
he is not.
foreign- Exactly. So since he's not, they don't know who he is, or who They all they know is the papers that he has.
I
but-
wonder what papers he had then.
Right. Right. I don't know. That
Because in
doesn't-
America, if you're a student and you have your student visa, you're still allowed to travel.
Yeah, but you're not a citizen.
Right.
Right. So you could travel, with your like passport. I don't know if you could like utilize your driver's license to fly within the country, because if you're a citizen, I think with your ID you could travel with your driver's license.
Yeah,
and not
you
your
can.
passport.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah. So it's really interesting how come that almost 300,000 Cubans who were sent to USSR to study, the exact number is actually unknown, but we just have a rough estimate, that some of them had to, like in this case, had to get a permission to be outside. Now, there is this article that I found in the New Line magazine that refers a research done by this guy named Charles Adade. And this guy, he wrote an article or research, he's a sociologist, about African Russian children, Afro-Russian children. And specifically, he was interviewing responders and their Soviet mothers who were saying that they experienced a lot of discrimination publicly, some of them experienced discrimination publicly and privately, and also that when they were getting in relationships, especially in physical, intimate relationships with African men, that they were stigmatized and they were called prostitutes by their families. Allah's family wasn't the same though. I mean, they are Soviet women, but they are ethnically Ukrainian. So perhaps the fact that they are a bit more different culturally than an average Russian person made it more easy for Allah's family to accept Aroldo. I mean, they loved him. Honestly, they loved him. And when Allah's mom was asked, what do you think? Your daughter, she's dating a Cuban guy. Like, aren't you against it or are you for it? What do you think? She simply said, and I quote, "This is her life. If she likes him, we like him too. I will tell you, he would come and I would always take care of him. Whatever he asked for, I would prepare for him because I loved him." End quote. Maybe perhaps because they're Ukrainian, they accepted him better. I don't know. But it still doesn't explain to me or gives me the exact answer. Why did he have to get a permission to be in the city out and about with Allah? And he didn't need any of that permission when he was inside the college. So if you know anything about that, let me know in the comments. Cubans who were sent to USSR, they were sent to study and get education. Some were sent to become medics, others were sent to work in to study agriculture, etc., technology. And they were expected to come back and fulfill their duty. By duty, I essentially mean whatever they learned, they were supposed to take that knowledge and help the country prosper. And, despite the fact that they had different priorities, like in 2006, to give you an example, in 2006, there was a Cuban documentary that's named "They Were All Going to Be Queens, Todas iban a ser reinas." In this documentary, the filmmakers, Gustavo Perez and Onyenda Gonzalez, they interviewed Soviet women who ended up coming to Cuba after they married. And one of the women shared her perspective about what was going on back then. But I think you need to hear. She said, "We became so deeply immersed in the romance of our relationship that we forgot about the restrictions that prohibited our connection. At that time, my husband had different duties, and marriage was not an option. He wasn't allowed to fall in love or start a family in my country. His obligation was to study and study only and return to his own country as a skilled professional. But you can't forbid the heart." End quote. With that, Allah and Aroldo, they got married. Aroldo proposed to Allah, and she said yes. So marriages in general, like I mentioned, between Cuban men and Soviet women were not that uncommon. Famously, nuclear physicist Fidel Castro Diaz Balart, Fidel Castro's son, he married a Russian woman, Olga Smirnova, and they had 3 kids. So Allah and Aroldo were over the moon happy. They got married, both loved each other so much. Allah's family loved him so much, and they had a love child. A baby boy was born, and they named him Aroldo Jr. after the father. Allah's sister Lydia recalls this moment with the following words, and I quote, "He was so happy. He brought many friends to show the baby boy. Here in USSR, it wasn't customary to show a child before the child was baptized, but he was filled with such joy and pride, showing off his beautiful son." End quote. This is interesting. She said before baptized, and this is still in USSR. I wonder if it was allowed in that part of USSR, which was now it's nowadays Ukraine, or if she meant the same way you were describing Cuba, where, baptizing children or doing anything religious was, kept under the rug.
Exactly that. I think baptizing as well. And every I don't quote me on the baptizing, but I definitely know about the marriages and how it wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
It's pretty it's pretty sad. To
Yeah.
be honest, you can't marry the person you want to marry because
And also, you don't consider this a marriage. In your eyes, you're sinning.
exactly.
And additional turmoil, and it's just hard. What's also hard was what seemed to be an ordinary day in July for a lot of people in USSR, but it wasn't for Alla and Aroldo. After 6 months of being married, Aroldo was urgently called to come back to Cuba. Now, they had talked about this before, and they thought about what they're gonna do. Of course, they're gonna reunite. They're a family, now they have a baby boy, and this is just temporarily. After all, everybody who was sent to USSR knew that they would have to come back. And because of that, they started to make some plans. How fast he can come back, when she can come back. And on their way to the airport, they had all the sorts of thoughts racing in their heads. Did you pack everything? When I'm gonna see you again? When will you see the sun again? And before even leaving USSR, Aroldo already started working on a plan. This man was strategizing. He already was thinking about ways to send the invitation and start planning this whole thing. But at the moment at the airport, the tension or the emotions were not as cheery. And let me read to you what Alla herself was saying about that moment. She said, and I quote, "The entire airport, everyone arriving and departing, came to a standstill. They froze in place as they climbed the steps. The Cubans stood there. There were also, I imagine, some other Cuban students that were now leaving USSR to go back to Cuba. They were crying," she says. Some were shouting, "Don't worry, Alushka," it's an endearing way for Allah, an endearing name for Allah. "Don't worry, Alushka, you will come back. He will come back, or you will come to Cuba. Don't you worry, I'm sure it's gonna happen." But as Lydia, Allah's sister, said, and I quote, "Of course it was a tragedy. We all were worried. We felt so bad for Aroldo," end quote. Now, while Aroldo was working on a plan to get Allah out of USSR or for him to be able to come back, they were exchanging love letters. "Hello, my beloved and forever loved Allah. With warm greetings to you, your husband Aroldo." This was the title of the very first correspondence that he sent to Allah. Not so long after that, he also sent her an invitation to come to Cuba. So it was pretty fast, yeah. And there was one small issue though. Where are they gonna get the money to buy tickets? Remember, Allah was at that time just entering her second year in college. And the only person working in Allah's family was her father. Her mom was already retired. And Aroldo wasn't making a lot of money. On average, the salary in Cuba at that time was $30 a month. But that wasn't something that they were worrying about too much because they started saving up money. And Aroldo was working really hard. Allah, slowly but surely, also entered the workforce and she started working herself. Now, I do want to highlight something that Allah's sister said to just give you a bit of a more realistic picture about what Allah's family was feeling. Despite Allah being very, very cheerful and she really was looking forward to it, some of her family members were, a bit suspicious about this. Her sister said, and I quote, "It, buying money, was very expensive back then. Low salaries. It's nowadays that you can take loans or ask someone to borrow money. Back then, such large amounts could not be borrowed." End quote. So no bank would give you the money. Nobody had the money to give it to you, so you wouldn't be able to borrow. But even if they did, it was highly unlikely that someone would give it to you. So remember, we're still in the end of 80s in the USSR. However, Allah and Aroldo did not give up. They continued to do everything that they could. They were saving up money. And in the meantime, they were maintaining their love for each other through letters. And I want to read to you a couple of the letters that they sent to each other. One of the letters that was keeping them together through the oceans, through the borders, was the following. Allah wrote to him, Haroldo, I love you, even more than before. So don't even worry that I started to love you less. It's hard to be without you. I miss you so much. I'm worried that you might leave me. It's okay. This separation will be a test for both of us. Who loves more, who misses more, and who believes more. End quote. Allah, whenever she could afford it, she would also had Haroldo Jr.'s pictures taken and send them to Haroldo so that her father can see how the baby is growing. At that time, remember, there was no Skype, no internets. The only way of communications was letters. And as soon as Haroldo received the photos of the baby Haroldo Jr., this is what he said to Allah via a letter. I almost wanted to say via email. Via a letter. He said, Allah, you wrote to me asking if I received your letter with the photos of you and the son. Yes, I did. I was so happy. I was dreaming of how I came back to Ukraine or came back to USSR and how you and I were together again. End quote. Have you ever sent letters?
I wrote letters, but send, through mail, no, never. But I've like handed the letter, yeah, but not mailed it. No.
So sending letters and receiving letters was not an easy task in USSR. On average, it would take about a couple of weeks, maybe 1 or 2 weeks, up to a month to get a letter and send a letter. And it was due to complications in transportation, geopolitical tensions, also some complications with postal communication and coordination. However, today, waiting for more than 5 minutes can feel an eternity. And they were waiting for 3 weeks, sometimes a month. I mean, man, we live in a different time now.
Reality is hitting.
I seriously feel like I cannot blame the generation of women that we have nowadays that say, oh, if he doesn't text me within 15 minutes, is he even interested? Because back then you had men who would be in the trenches and war zones and they would send you letters. On the contrary, though, I feel like nowadays if men don't get a response from a woman like within the time that he expects, he might think either, oh, she's playing games. Yeah? Or he might think, oh, she's cheating on me.
That too.
So just generally when I was researching the story and thinking about this, I was like, man, we truly live in a different time. And technology, I feel like on some level, messed up our understanding of love.
100%.
And understanding of patience.
Yeah, because it gave, technology gave access to everybody. Everybody could talk to each other through a cellular device, or device. So now it's like, you could approach anybody. You could talk to anybody. Now, will they talk to you? That's up to them. But if you're, attractive, I guess that they'll definitely talk back.
And you know what I thought about this now? This concept of ghosting? If anything, the concept of ghosting should have been created back in the 80s in the USSR because you would wait, couple of weeks to a month? That's like what a ghosting could be considered.
Exactly.
Now, I feel like if someone doesn't reply to you within a day or two, that's when you start using this term. But I digress. Allah and Haroldo, without, don't get me wrong, they did not have a perfect relationship either. Of course, back in the day, people also fought. And one of the examples of Allah and Haroldo having this kind of fight can be shown in the following letter. Allah writes, and I quote, I wrote 2 letters together with photos. Haroldo, what are you saying? I'm writing this letter, and I even sent photos. In each photo, I wrote, I kiss you tightly, I love you very much, and I miss you terribly. And you are upset? Saying I love you less than you love me? On the contrary, I love you more than you love me, and I miss you even more. You said our relationship depends entirely on me, but no, my dear, it doesn't. I love you, and that's all. As for you, that's a different conversation. End quote. So yeah, they did fight via letters, and it took, up to a month to wait for a response. Now, if you thought things couldn't get worse, just wait. After the collapse of USSR in 1991, now you have communications severed between USSR, a country that no longer exists, between the rest of the world. Now you have independent countries like Ukraine, where Allah was living, that had to establish the connection routes with other countries. Essentially, build your postal services and connections from scratch. Not only at that time, your letters would take now months to get, but also some of them would get lost. So there were moments when she wouldn't get a letter from him, or he wouldn't get letters from her.
And they actually were sent.
And they were actually sent. On top of this, in 1991, Cuba entered what's called a special period. What that means is that there was a shortage of fuel, shortage of basic goods. There was lots of, a lot of chaos going on, and it complicated logistics. Also logistics when it comes to the mail postal services. Although this economic period was a bit of, alleviated by Venezuela when they subsidized I can't say this. Subsidized, thank you, oil to Cuba in the 2000s. However, still, the effects of the special period, had drastic complications and implications on the postal services for years after that. My beloved Haroldo, I still wear your ring, and I never take it off. This was a letter that Allah sent to Haroldo 4 years after he left. They've been in correspondence for 4 years. And as time went on, unfortunately, things didn't get better. And there were still no funds to buy a plane ticket. Allah, what she did even, she started to buy lottery tickets in hopes that one of the lottery tickets will be lucky and that she will get the money, she will be able to buy tickets for her and for her son and go and see her husband and reunite with her husband.
So in Cuba, there was also lottery tickets, and it was to get out of Cuba and go to America. My family won that lottery. Well, at least my mom. My mom signed without knowing. There was people like going around giving out papers, and like you would just sign and give it back. And out of so many thousands of people, I was one of the families that got picked to go. And here we are.
That is incredible.
Yeah, if not, I would have been over there. Well, I mean, maybe not, but maybe. Who knows?
Wow. I remember that when I was researching, Ala did win some money. She won $15, and she bought something nice for her son.
Oh, that's
And Haroldo, when he found out through letters that she's buying lottery tickets, he said, "Honey, don't do that. Save up this money instead." Now, everybody in Allah's life knew about this story. Also the neighbors. And this is what one of the neighbors says about that period for her. She says, of course she was waiting for him. Waiting for the moment when someone knocks on the door and Haroldo is there. Was waiting when she opens up the mailbox and there it is. Another letter from him with an invitation to come, and she's able to get on the plane and they are reunited. End quote. 5 excruciating years have passed, and since they started exchanging letters, right? Unfortunately, the situation has not improved, and I think at that point, Allah and Haroldo both felt that, maybe it's time to move on. Maybe it's time to, for him to start his life and for her to start hers. And in one of the last letters that he sent Allah, he informed her that he's getting married. And when that letter came, Allah was at a salon. She was working as a hairdresser, and the entire hair salon was crying.
Wow.
It's the end of 1990. So much is going on in the world. It's the rise of Spice Girls and Backstreet Boys. USSR no longer exists. Putin takes over Russia. NATO intervenes in Kosovo. and the world entered the dot-com boom. There's also a lot going on in Alla's life as well. Alla was able, now that she's living in Ukraine, independent Ukraine, she's able to end her marriage one-sidedly and was a free woman now. She gets married to another man and she has another baby with him. Now, they've lived together for about 7 years, and after 7 years, they got divorced. Things did not work out. And that baby boy, what's interesting, his name was the same name as his father's. So Aroldo is named after the father, Aroldo, and this boy was named after his father. So people were kind of joking, like, Alla, is that your tradition, like naming the kids after their fathers? Now, her son, Aroldo, was no longer a little boy. He grew up with so much love by everybody. At first, the neighbors, I remember reading, they had hard time pronouncing his name because it's not a common Ukrainian name, Aroldo.
Right.
And they tried to give him some pet names or name him something else, but mom would always stop them and said, no, you can't do this. He's half Cuban, that's his name, you have to respect that. And, they did. People learned how to say his name and actually really, really liked this boy. And from early on, he knew about his Cuban roots. He even learned how to dance bachata. Yeah, I don't know if he was learning Spanish, but when he got married, he was already an adult. He got married. He had a baby of his own. He really wanted to connect with his father because he honestly never connected with his stepfather. Despite, being at that time a young little boy, people say that when you're younger, it's maybe when you're that young, that it might be easier to connect with a new parent in your family, but it wasn't for him. He never let anyone come close to him. But he did have this sense of longing towards his father. And interestingly, Lala's sister, Lydia, she bought a huge atlas of Cuba, like that was this thick, and she would show it to him, like before he would go to sleep, like, this is where your father lives, this is the culture of Cuba, this is the music, this is the, cuisine, etc. They never let the boy forget about their father. And when he said to his mom, I want to meet my dad, I want to learn about my dad again, I want to, be able to see him, she tried to send another letter with now photos of his granddaughter, but no reply. Until one day. Lydia was out and about, Alla's sister. She was just running errands and doing her own thing. And she gets a call from Alla. She hasn't heard Alla this excited and happy in a very, very long time. She says, you won't believe what happened. Guess what? Lydia says, what? What happened? Tell me. Aroldo is looking for us through Red Cross.
What?
It's
incredible.
Been over, at that point, almost over 20-something years. 20 plus. He's now looking for them through Red Cross.
Wow. And I mean, he found them, right?
Well, that we'll find out in part 2.
Beautiful.
So let me know, guys, what you think. Yeah, what are your thoughts? I really, really want to know what your thoughts about this story. And I'll see you in part 2. Bye.